Recording in progress.
Call the meeting to order. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call for the record. Mayor Lindsay,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Howe,
Here.
Councilor Humbert,
Here.
Councilor Crane,
Here.
Councilor Weeks.
Here.
We have a quorum, you may proceed.
At this time, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda with the modification of item H to read, approve a change of one full-time position in joint utilities to a PRN position in streets and in joint utilities.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
If I could please get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We did not have any requests from the audience to speak to matters not pertaining to this agenda. So we'll move on to announcements and proclamations by the council. If the councilors don't have anything, Manager Weir, would you like to make an announcement?
Yes, Mayor, Council, members of the audience, I just wanted to announce that our official inaugural flight for the commercial air flight into Angel Fire Airport from the Albuquerque Airport will be this Thursday. We will have dignitaries. There will be a ribbon cutting at the Albuquerque
Next
All
Thursday.
right, I'll tell you what, Greg, I'm up here, but Greg's the one who really put this together. Stand up and tell us about it, it's a big deal.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, council, audience, a little confusion on that date. The inaugural flight will be on the 19th.
What'd I say?
It's leaving,
Thursday.
you said this Thursday, you scared me to death. It's the following Thursday. We're lining up great speakers in Albuquerque, trying to get the governor involved, the mayor of Albuquerque and others, and we're gonna try to get some good momentum for that flight. It'll be landing here in Angel Fire a little after 1 o'clock. If you wanna join the party out there next Thursday, the 19th.
And I will just add to that, that I've already booked personal flights on this airlines to fly into Albuquerque. So it's real easy, it's cheap, 81 bucks, unless you want the ability to cancel within an hour of a flight, and then it's 105 bucks. So no cancellation, 81 bucks each way, the ability to cancel up to an hour ahead of the flight, 105 bucks. What a deal.
All right, thank you both. Moving on to staff reports. Did we have Chief Hograve, Chief Vance, did y'all have staff reports this evening?
Hello, Mayor Lindsay, members of the council, Manager Weir, thanks for having me today. Here for the staff report for the fire department. We had a pretty slow month by numbers sake. We had 6 total fire calls and 12 total EMS calls. So pretty slow by our standards. We're bracing for impact for the upcoming ski season and adding up staffing, beefing up staffing, especially around the weekends to be able to support that. Just a couple of things that are going on in the fire department. We are in cooperation with Morano Valley Eagle Nest to add a west side repeater. We've added in a building up by the water tanks. We've got power, we've got internet, we have all of the equipment, we have security cameras, and we're expecting that that is gonna get turned on by the end of the year, so that will vastly improve communications for all public safety, including police department and public works, to be able to communicate within the valley. So we're really looking forward to that. Any questions on that? We also have a couple of items on the agenda we'll discuss later, the donation of a couple of vehicles and the conclusion of the audit findings from 2023 and 2024. And the new fire station design is being worked on. We were sent a few proofs for design materials this past week that we shared within a small group and made some decisions. Best way to describe it is we're modeling it sort of off the aesthetic of what the resort looks like. So we're really looking forward to that, and as soon as we get more information, we'll share that with the group. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Epler?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Manager Weir, Deputy Clerk Strickland, welcome. Go through, got quite a bit to update because I haven't updated in quite some time, but I'll try to make it quick as we have a long agenda. First thing I want to update on is the status of the new replacement well, the Agua Fria well in the back basin. The well is complete, test pumping was complete, pitless adapter was installed today. Plumbing to the pump house, or booster station house, should take place Thursday and Friday of this week. They'll be dropping the pump in, and the well will be ready to go. One thing that will delay putting the well online is the series of water quality testing that they have to do. And it comes down to one test in particular, it takes 4 weeks. They took the sample about a week and a half ago, so that's how far we are into it. We're looking at probably just before the beginning of the new year to be able to put that well online if everything goes well. There were some challenges with the weather. The driller had quite a learning experience working in an alpine environment, but they pulled it off through some pretty challenging times. So that's where that's the status on that well. Does anybody have any questions in regards to the well? Okay.
How deep did it end up in?
680 feet. So, and it's producing water. Would have liked to have it producing more, of course, but it'll be enough to sustain our water levels back there. So it'll be good to get that back online. Again, I would really like to express my thanks to Jesse Stocking, the snowmaking manager for Angel Fire Resort, in assisting us utilizing one of the snowmaking wells. As you can imagine, once we started hitting freezing temperatures, there was even more of a challenge. Plus, he was needing that water to make snow too, which, by the way, they've made a lot of snow. It's going to be a great opening for the resort. I want to give a quick update. Basically, we had a lot of really good accomplishments in the Joint Utility Department, particularly the water side of things. Field crew just did an astronomical job. In years past, there's been major challenges with obtaining components for water meter installs. Really all components, supply chain was very tough. So there was quite a backlog of water meter installs that needed to be done. In the spring, we had some water meter orders that were 2 years old that hadn't been addressed. They pretty much cleared the list out that we started with in the spring and got a lot of them in for the new construction projects as well. They have also, when they were in situations where they were installing a new water meter, if there was an old water meter can right next to it, they put a new one in as well. So we put a few in the last week, but we're right around the 60 number of meter installs, which I think is far beyond what has been accomplished in the past few years. Supply chain was much better for materials and components. I think one of the tasks that they did that they really hit aggressively was addressing some of the many leaks we had on our water system. Some were pretty significant and had been ongoing for quite some time. I'm gonna take two examples. There was one leak over by Monte Verde Lake, not far from where Greg Ralph lives. It was leaking at a rate of about 5 gallons a minute, for a few years. Okay, at 5 gallons a minute equates to 8 acre-feet of water in a year's time. The second example I'd like to use is there was a fire hydrant on Sierra Blanca Circle that had been leaking for quite a few years as well. Conservatively, I would say it was leaking 10 gallons a minute. Those two leaks combined are 24 acre-feet of water. And put dollars to that, it's a good dollar amount we were losing out on the ground. The other step that they're taking is the bleeder lines that we have to run to keep lines from freezing. We are metering those, and we should be able to get return flow credits on those, which is gonna help on our water rights. We're doing everything within the water department to maximize the water rights that we have, knowing that we're getting to a pretty critical stage on water rights. Any questions about water department?
Manager?
Director Epler, if you don't mind, I just wanna make sure that the public and the council understands the impacts of these repairs that the water department is making. 24 acre-feet from 2 repairs, and y'all made 8 of those types of repairs this summer. So
Another one happening tomorrow, so.
24 acre-feet, we used in excess of our senior rights last year, about 120 acre-feet. That's what we had to pull out of storage, and you know, our storage and water rights is limited. We're down to about 200 acre-feet left out of that original 750 acre-feet of water. So 2 fixes is taking up, you know, what is that? About 20% of the water loss, the excess water loss that we had last year, and as we said, for at least the last 3 years, we've been experiencing that.
So a way to put it in perspective for folks that don't know, I mean, it's acre feet. For example, the village of Eagle Nest has never exceeded 65 acre feet of water usage in a year. So we were on those 2 leaks, 1/3 of what the village of Eagle Nest uses in a year. So these type of things are extremely significant for the village.
And the bleeders, that's great, that's fantastic.
Yeah, they, unfortunately, they are a necessity, but moving forward, we have a few ideas to eliminate some of the larger bleeder lines. They'll be significant, seem like significant projects in the beginning, but they'll pay themselves back over time.
Absolutely.
Essentially creating some loop lines in areas so we're not having to install bleeders. Any other questions about water? Here, real quick update on roads. This hasn't changed much as we stopped hauling base course after the snow we got in early November. But we did get right at the 15-mile mark of roads that, and road sections that we placed material on. Went very well. Few spots we kinda got caught with our pants down by the snow, but that's Angel Fire, that's construction. The guys have been out with this window of good weather, trying to do everything they can on the road, smooth them up, and scrape some ice off that's still lingering from the storm. In hopes that smoother we have the road, the roads, the more efficient and productive we can be in the winter time in snow removal, and hopefully experience less damage to the equipment.
Manager?
Mr. Mayor, Council, Director Epler. Again, I just want to stress one thing, based on feedback from the community. We did resurface 15 miles of roads, which I believe to be a record, at least since the village of Angel Fire's been here. And we're still getting complaints on the fact that that new surface is washboarding. And I just want the public to know that as long as they're speeding on dirt roads, I don't care, you know, what kind of dirt you use. If it's a dirt road and you speed, you're gonna create washboards, and that's exactly what creates it. If everybody would drive 25 miles an hour or less on those roads, the washboarding might not be 100% gone, but it would be significantly less. So when there's washboarding on a road, it's because the people using it are speeding.
Well, I'd like to add on that, the benefit of having material on the road is having material on the road. Prior, as we'd get bad conditions, on a road, there was no material to grab and try to repair everything. Again, we had bedrock showing in some places. We had, some dry utility, foam drops in particular, that were exposed in the road. So we needed to get things covered back up. But yes, it'll be a great benefit to when we do have to go work roads that we have material to do it with. Okay. Quick update for solid waste, they did receive 19 new dumpsters, exact same style that they received last spring. And as we get closer to the holiday season, they'll be reconfiguring dumpsters over on Halo Pines Road to maximize space and efficiency, and everything's been going well on their end.
On the dumpsters, does it look like these are holding up as well as the others, or you think that this is probably these are the best for the bang for the buck?
Well, they are, the price is very good on them. There is an issue, as you notice, many of the dumpsters, if you're looking directly at them, the door on the right is bent. It has to do with the shape of the truck. If you look at them compared to the old dumpsters, they are slightly taller. So when the dumpster is unloaded, if the doors flap open at just the right rhythm,
Yeah.
that one side catches on a sloped angle in the truck. Part of the way Mr. Gully has identified that they can alleviate this is just being slower in the dump cycle and not bouncing the dumpsters up. And we are able to get repair doors for them, and we wanna stay on top of them. Did wanna announce that, we'll be starting to put Christmas decorations up on Highway 434 and North Angel Fire Road. We are trying to coordinate with an electrician to get some more power outlets on some of the street lights that go up North Angel Bill Burgess Boulevard. So we can install some more lighting. Right now, the only light poles that we have that have power outlets are the ones on Highway 434. Any questions about that? Okay. The next thing I wanna do is I wanna recognize one of my staff members that recently became a certified chief procurement officer. And, not only did she get the certificate, she's already had duties as the backup, as our chief procurement officer was out for the holidays. Her name is Carly Ramirez. So, here we go, in a nice frame. Yeah.
Good job.
And also, with that, ma'am, you receive a pay increase. I do wanna add that along with this, Carly has taken on the duties of asset manager. She took those duties on at the beginning of the fiscal year. She's done very well with that, getting a lot of our stuff up to date. And she also just recently handled and managed the auction to dispose of old assets. And it's still ongoing, as we're actually still selling some stuff at scrap value. She's also taken on duties as coordinating all of our employee trainings and everything from sexual harassment. I had 3 guys in trench safety course today. That's the only reason. That's today's the first day water department guys weren't out in the ditch because they were out doing some safety training. Since I started in January, I can't say enough about how it's been working with Carly. I don't know how she does it. She is a mother of 5. And she's got to babysit me during the day and 7 grumpy streets guys also. Thank you very much, Carly, for everything that you did. There's no questions, that's it.
Thank you, sir. Any other staff reports at this time? Heather?
Hi, Mayor, Council, Manager Weir. I just want to give you an update. Our audit was turned in on time. All of our bank recs are up to date, and we recently hired a new staff member, so we're moving ahead and trying to stay on top of it.
That's a very big deal. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I have one last thing, gentlemen, and members of the public. Last week, we did a swearing-in ceremony for several of our employees at the push-in ceremony. As you all know, some of you were there. We have a couple of members here that weren't there and able to make it, so I'd like you guys to stand before the members of council and take your oath. Part of the reason why we do our oath is back to the founding fathers, including George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Samuel Adams. They all were firefighters first and founded the fire department. It's a lot of what our country is founded upon. So the only way to endeavor to protect the general welfare is to able to raise an alarm and have someone respond and answer the call. This declaration, duty and faith must be taught and handed down today. To take an oath in public service is honored in our society, and especially in a small, tight-knit community like Angel Fire, New Mexico. Those willing to stand with me and take an oath, please stand, place one hand over your heart, and repeat after me. Now you put your left hand out. Okay. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and in the state of New Mexico,
and in the state of New Mexico,
that I will obey the laws and ordinances
that I will obey the laws and ordinances
of the Village of Angel Fire,
of the Village of Angel Fire,
familiarize myself,
familiarize myself,
and be obedient to
and be obedient to
the rules, regulations, and orders
the rules, regulations, and orders
of the Angel Fire Department.
of the Angel Fire Department.
In the discharge of my duties as a firefighter,
In the discharge of my duties as a firefighter,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you for turning it down. You have publicly sworn an oath not for pomp and circumstance, but for a solemn commitment under God and country and community. Our republic will endure as long as good men and women stand and honor their oath. So ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mitchell McNeil. Ashlyn Sanchez. And last but not least, Marcus Smith. Marcus Smith just graduated Fire Academy and has now been promoted to firefighter, paramedic, and we're happy to have you. So thank you. Congratulations.
That'll conclude our staff reports. Moving on to committee reports. Do we have any updates from any committees this evening? Councilor Crane?
I don't have any chairs here, but I'll update. Fire Adaptive Committee met just before this meeting to review the very much simplified DSO that Chief Vance and Lindsay have been helping write over the last several weeks, so progress moves forward there. The Dark Sky Committee has voted to approve and send up to legal review a Dark Sky ordinance, and Clerk Lear and I will be headed to Albuquerque next week for a board meeting for the Mortgage Finance Authority of New Mexico for some grant writing activities where, fingers crossed, they're gonna give us some money. So hopefully we'll come back next week with some more money to spend on our workforce housing projects.
Thank you, Counselor. I think that would conclude committee reports. So without any old business, we'll move on to new business. Mayor Pro Tem, if I could, well, I'd like to open discussion to approve resolution 2024-75 carryover cash bars. Manager Weir.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, council, ladies and gentlemen. We have several bars. I think on the staff recommendation, it gives a reasonable description of what these bars are for. There's a couple of things that I want to point out to make sure that you understand. The first one, of course, the community center is doing an exterior remodel right now. There were some change orders that were needed as construction started, and so those, that's what that first one is for. We've also purchased, the village has purchased a 15-passenger van that will be used potentially, primarily it's gonna be used for a day camp at the community center in the summers. They've been using two very old Suburbans that we felt were potentially unsafe, especially to have several children in them when we transport them for day camp. So we bought a more modernized van. The van will also be used when needed, potentially if we do obtain operational control of the airport to transport people that fly in from the airport from local destinations. The other item is for a digital repeater. We have a new digital repeater that's been placed on tank 4. I'm sorry?
The Aspen tank.
Oh, that Aspen tank. And it's that repeater's been placed up there primarily to try and get better coverage in less areas where we don't have coverage for communications within our departments. It's also gonna allow us to move some equipment down the line and actually add some the ability for Public Works Department to communicate with other first responders more effectively in emergency situations. There's a couple of them in here that I think I'd explained to the council before. We did the upload of our budget into the budget system. There were some items that the LGBMS, the local government business management system, did not upload, and it didn't get caught. So we have a couple of those in there just cleaning up your approved budget, but since it's the official budget is what we upload to LGBMS, even though the numbers just match what the budget you approved, well, we still have to do a bar to get LGBMS updated. We also are providing a pumper tender, $446,000 for a pumper tender. I asked Chief Vance to find a unicorn that was, in his words, a unicorn that was going to help us with our ISO rating. And this is what we came up with. We were able to find one. We were very lucky to find one that was already built, because to buy a new one is at least 2 years out. And we will have our ISO.
It is brand new.
It's brand new.
Yeah, so yeah, it's not, we were fortunate to get a brand new.
Right. We were fortunate to get a brand new one that was available immediately. Anyhow, that should help us with our ISO ratings, which I think this summer we're gonna have to go through that review process again. We're doing everything we can to keep our ISO as low as possible. Of course, we're all aware of the new ambulance. I will tell you that for the ambulance, we had $264,000 that we received from the federal government back in 2021 under ARPA. We have no record of that money ever being expended. The federal government had no record of that money being expended, and we had to expend it before December 31st, or we would have had it. So there is a very tight list of requirements of items that money could be spent on. And, public safety vehicles was one of those. And so, we were able to utilize that money, in part to help pay for that ambulance. And then, the other item is an upgrade into the body cameras. The body cameras that we have and, with our police force right now do have technical issues, especially in weather, which we have a lot of. And so we're upgrading them to a higher end body camera and including in that purchase dash cameras for our police vehicles. First time we've ever had dash cameras. So I felt that that was important for public safety and to make sure that, our police officers would be able to record and feel safe, that the public's knowing that they're recording things. So that was an unbudgeted expense that I felt like, we needed to do. And, we're asking the council to approve these increases in the budget.
Any questions? Comments? If not, Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2024-75 carryover cash bars.
I'll second.
Roll call on item A. Mayor Pro Tem,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Okay, moving on to item B, I'd like to open discussion to approve workforce housing employee survey.
So, yep, I'll be happy to present this one. The Workforce Housing Committee has already sent out an employer survey that several of the local businesses responded to. I don't have the survey handy in front of me, but I believe at last count, it was showing we were some 300 employees that could have been potentially hired across all businesses if there was adequate housing for said employees.
304.
304, there's your number, yep. So, that was our first survey, was the employer survey. We have also used that same survey tool and created an internal survey that we've given to Manager Weir that will be disseminated out to the department heads so we can get a feel for our employees. We currently have 70-some employees, and we're trying to figure out how many of those employees will move into workforce housing should it become available. Take that number and add to new positions we'd like to hire. In addition to that, what we're seeking to do, if any of you saw the flyer that was generated for the spring trash cleanup, what we've done is we've created an employee survey, and we're going to be posting this, assuming it's approved, everywhere that all village agendas get posted. We'll be seeking permission to post it at the post office as well. So this is just more data from our employees trying to figure out who needs housing, what type of housing, cost numbers, those types of things. So it's just good local data. So we have already generated the QR code, and we used our marketing firm is who generated the spring flyer and who's generated this flyer. So this is what we're seeking approval for today. Everyone should have this in your packet. So this will just be posted up so we can get more data from our employee base. Questions on that form?
Mr. Mayor, I worked through that survey. It was very user-friendly and very well done.
Well, that's special thanks to Counselor Crane, Elizabeth Ricketson, and the entire Workforce Housing Committee. They've done an amazing job all the way around, so yes, another great job, so thank you. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the workforce housing employee survey.
I'll second.
Roll call on item B. Mayor Pro Tem,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Okay, moving on to item C, I'd like to open discussion to approve a temporary event facility. Director Ralph.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council, Manager Weir. As you know, we've been working on plans and development of a temporary event facility that will be right back here in the Liberty Square property. Initially, we were looking at doing it where the ground's been improved, closer to the fire station. Looking at it now, we may need that for parking, and we may be able to save some effort and some money if we build a temporary facility where we're gonna build our permanent facility when it comes about. So if we can, the plans that you've got are from an engineering and landscape planning firm out of Albuquerque. They're doing Eagle Nest State Park, they've done some other parks in the area. Gentleman came up, worked through us, we met with him, walked the area, they've developed some conceptual drawings for us. They're gonna step into once we get approval, they'll step into the planning stage, and then we'll start working with the people that I need to work with to get this center open by middle of June. The reason for this, the bottom line reason for this is, we've outgrown our capacity at Frontier Park. To do larger events that are gonna actually bring in guests that will contribute lodger's tax with bigger events that bring in overnight guests, we need a larger facility where we can do a controlled gate, have some concerts and events that are paid admission, not always free, so we're bringing in bigger acts. The facilities, as close as we can imagine what we'd like, we have 20,000 square feet of sod, so we've got a nice big lawn for people to lay out, watch the concerts, enjoy the scene. A temporary tent in the back, a temporary stage at the front, and then when we'll get to the next agenda item, there'll be a skate park facility in that same area for recreation. So we're trying to do it all right back here. Talked to Kurt about the dirt work that needs to be done. We're in conversation with Kit Carson Electric about electrical. We need sewer and water. We've got a lot of work to do. We've got to get Wi-Fi in there. This facility will have restroom trailers that we bring in, that we will rent, so they're not part of the construction costs. And then we're soliciting food trucks, and we've got commitments from a couple food trucks already that wanna come in Angel Fire and open up in this new area. I'm looking at a budget of $275,000 that would be a maximum for this. As you can see, the line item budget's a little less than that, but I know there's hidden costs. I know there's things that'll pop up. I'm not a construction expert, but I know there's always surprises. So the goal is to build a facility that we can handle bigger events, drive more lodger's tax. I know it's temporary, but some of this can be utilized when we get going on Liberty Square and get our permanent facilities going. Hopefully the sod, when we do lay down the sod, when we plan on laying it back there, it could be moved. So, but obviously you'd rather not move sod. So that's that proposal. Any questions for me?
This is 100% lodger's tax spend.
Yes.
So you've received, we'll still have events in Frontier Park, smaller events, the
Yes.
larger events.
Yeah, we'll still work with the resort wherever we can but there was concerns last year from John Kitts about the building larger events and overrunning the park. And we don't wanna destroy the centerpiece of our community with big, 2,000, 3,000 person events. And that's what I'd like to get, is 2,000 to 3,000 person events. Currently, our Frontier Park, our Cool Summer Nights concerts run about 275 people, up to maybe 450 people is a big one. The drone show that you saw that's bigger in the park would be about 500 to 700 people is in the park. So we need a larger capacity facility. We really need something. This includes barricades, Wi-Fi. We tried to look at everything we need for back there.
Any other questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I make a motion to approve the temporary event facility.
I'll second.
Roll call vote on item C. Mayor Pro Tem,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Moving on to item D, I'd like to open the discussion to approve the skate festival.
Over the last 2 summers, we've had a gentleman step up, a local member of our community with a skate background, Oliver Bradley, has come in and produced a great 2-day skateboard festival event back here in the Liberty Square area. I think you've probably witnessed it, so on 4th of July weekend. Good attendance, local kids loved it, got some interest going and built a little fun for the youth, teens in the valley. And it's been a big success. The families have enjoyed it. Had a lot of families with little kids coming in and getting them on the ramp and stuff. And Oliver's, we met when I first started the job and talked about what we'd like to do. Eventually, we'd like a skate park and a pump track and those facilities built out in our recreation for the valley. This proposal for this skate festival and this event is a temporary facility like Oliver's done in the past, the big ramp, a little bigger this year, a little more put into it, and then a lot more events put around it. He's got some clinics, some lessons, a skate club, some concerts, really building some energy into that market and giving us some recreation for our youth and our guests. You know, it'd be nice to have a great skateboard event that's bringing people in overnight and bringing families up from the New Mexico and northern Texas regions to come to Angel Fire for something that's got a musical act and some judging and some contests and other things. And Oliver's got these built into this. We've got the ability to promote them and get people here. And this also would sort of almost be a pilot program for our eventual permanent skate park. Much like the temporary events facility is a pilot program for our events program. We'll see what we can do, we'll grow it. This skate fest and this facility are also sort of a test ground to see where we can go with this and build it into our offerings for the valley. So, and Oliver's proposal is right around $75,000. It's $75,600. Any questions for me or Oliver?
No other questions or comments? Does Mayor Pro Tem Howe to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the skate festival.
I'll second.
Roll call on item D. Mayor Pro Tem,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
We got some work to do, Oliver. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
We'll move on to item E. I'd like to open discussion to approve a digital sign. Director Ralph.
This digital sign proposal is for right out here. That digital sign that's been non-functional for a while, it has a green banner above it says, "Welcome to Angel Fire." That will come down and a digital sign will go in there that's basically the same size as the one at Frontier Park, except it's 2-sided. It's put in by the same company as the company that did the work at Frontier Park. I worked with them at the resort, very responsive. They're out of Colorado, but they are a New Mexico approved vendor. They went through those processes so we could contract with them. Very responsive. It's controlled by an app. We can promote all our activities, events, and happenings on that sign. Give us a way to communicate to tourists, everything that's going on, hopefully drive people to things, get them aware of things once they're in a community that they may not be aware of. It will be a great communications tool for us to use. The price is very good, and it's only guaranteed for a short time until prices start rising after the first of the year, potentially.
Any questions for Director Ralph?
You just had one quick question. Will this sign be on all day? Will we be shutting it off at a certain time of night?
No, it's much like the Frontier sign. That's ordinance to go off. It goes dark at 10.
Okay.
So it would be the same compliance.
Got it.
And based on where it is, this New Mexico Department of Transportation does not allow you to show moving video. It has to be static images, so that's what we will be using out there.
So we've been without a sign for more than 5 years, so I commend you for getting us a sign.
Well, and I have to say Counselor Humbert was very instrumental in getting this, put together as well.
Yeah, he bugs me all the time.
I've been bitching about it for 5 years. Do you think it will be installed before the ski season ends?
I think it will be installed potentially by the middle of January. They're pretty fast.
Good.
I was talking with the supplier just before this. Told him I'd call back tomorrow and hopefully start an arrangement.
Very good.
Yeah, we wanna get it going.
This is a good thing, and it will let all the visitors coming in, plus the people who live here, know what's going on.
Yeah.
It is a good thing.
Much needed.
I would like to just make a comment. I was at the lighting ceremony was it last Friday? It was excellent. I want to commend Brandon and your whole team. It was well attended. You had, the chocolate line was too dead gum long. I had to stand in line for 30 minutes to get a cup of hot chocolate. But it was really a great event. And that is just one of the things that y'all have going on in your head of what is gonna be coming down the pike. And I commend your whole team. You're doing a wonderful job.
We do have a great team over there, and I'm very proud of the staff and the work they do. I'd like to invite everybody to come out Saturday night, 4 o'clock, for our Calling Off Lake celebration. We'll have the Pueblo dancers down there, we'll have the 30-minute hot chocolate lines, I'm sure. The heaters will be out, so join us Saturday at 4, it'll be a great weekend event.
I never could get to the s'mores line.
Show them your platinum membership.
Mayor Pro Tem, if you would please make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the digital sign.
I'll second.
Roll call on item E. Mayor Pro Tem,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Okay, we'll move on to item F. I'd like to open discussion to approve donation of Old Village Department, I believe this is the pumper tender truck. Manager Weir, I'm sorry, Chief Vance.
The fire department has 2 vehicles we'd like to donate. One of them is old 2780 Rescue. It's a top kick rescue that's been, we've had some mechanical issues with it and addressed them. It's now running and operating, but with the addition of our newest one, we don't have a space to house it. So we feel like it'd be better served to donate it to somebody within the community. Sierra Bonita Rincon Fire Department, SBR, Fire Department has agreed to take it on, and they've come up and inspected it. They've agreed to remove all markings before they put it into service, and agreed to take it in as is status. We also have old 2780, the old pumper, or excuse me, the old tender that's been sitting outside of Station 3 for multiple years and hasn't ran. As I understand it, the pump was ruined when some chemical was placed, batch mixed into the tank, and it's been sitting ever since. I don't know exactly, y'all could give better context to that. We have 2 fire departments interested in taking that. One of them is Philmont, and the other one is an outside of Las Vegas fire department. So we haven't worked out the details of that. I have most of the paperwork done for procurement and just making sure that we check all the boxes to make sure that we're within regulation to do that. But we'd like permission to donate those vehicles to those agencies.
Any questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
I make a motion to approve donation of Old Village Fire Department tender.
I'll second.
Roll call on item F. Mayor Pro Tem Howell,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
I have a question, does that include the rescue as well, both vehicles? I'm not sure that I worded it correctly.
Yeah, you'll have to come back again
Yes, sir,
because it wasn't on the agenda that way.
understood, thank you.
Maybe at that time you'll have identified the recipient.
Yes, sir.
With that, we'll move on to item G. I'd like to open discussion to approve the payback of misappropriated funds in the amount of $44,462.37. Chief Vance?
Sorry about that, didn't know they were back to back. Subject to the audit findings of the 2023, 2024 fiscal year audit, I just wanted to acknowledge the work that Miss Valerie Witt did, the Senior Administrative Assistant for the Fire Department. Even long before I got here in July, she had done extensive work on this, and the second half of it has just been completed and submitted to the State Fire Marshal. The audit findings were that initially the audit findings were around $224,000, and due to her hard work and effort, that has been reduced down to $44,462.37. Yeah, that was the findings of the audit.
Manager Weir?
So, Mr. Mayor, Council, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we receive state fire funds. The rules are very rigid in what that money can be spent on. It was inappropriately spent last year, prior to January of this year. The fire marshal found it actually in the prior year, in 22-23 was when we made a payment approximately this size for that year. It triggered them to audit this year. Fortunately, most of this, or all of this really comes prior to mid-January of the year. But this is money that was spent. It was spent for things that the statute does not allow, and consequently, we have to repay out of our general fund that money to the State Fire Marshal. So that's what this is.
I'll only add that not a penny in the fire department is spent without deep scrutiny by Miss Valerie Witt. She keeps us pretty honest, and we won't repeat those mistakes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor Pro Tem?
I make a motion to approve payback of misappropriated funds in the amount of $44,462.37.
I'll second.
Roll call vote on item G. Mayor Pro Tem Hal.
Aye.
Counselor Humbert.
Aye.
Counselor Crane.
Aye.
Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Moving on to item H, I'd like to open discussion for the amended item H, which is to approve a change of one full-time position from joint utilities to a PRN position in streets and joint utilities. Director Epler.
Again, good evening, Mayor, Council, Manager Weir, Deputy Clerk Strickland. What I'd like to do here, instead of increase a head count, want to create a PRN position, because I realized in trying to get staffing levels to optimum points at different times of the year, one, identified there might be opportunity in the winter time to get applicants of equipment operators that work construction throughout the summer, but do it seasonally, and might be able to get an experienced operator during the winter time. What kind of helped bring this about is in the water department, we had a gentleman that started working with us in May by the name of Nathan Gopium. He's retired military, really a great worker, very sharp. For what it's worth, he is certified to disarm multiple nuclear weapons, which makes him pretty handy in trying to get a booster station up and running. We discovered the first week of November, when we got the big snows, and it impeded the ability of the water department to do digging, installing meters, repairing leaks and everything. He was a little bored, okay, the guy is a very driven individual. And, you know, I'm not making this change just to accommodate an individual person, but it just so happens that it plays in with this scenario. He had asked if he could go to a seasonal status. Now, as we don't have seasonal positions, created in streets or in water department, after discussion with, Ms. McClendon, our HR director, and Manager Weir, we thought that a better option might be to create a PRN position, and, so I can have somebody in a motor grader in the wintertime, and I can get Mr. Gopium back in the summertime. So that is the purpose that is driving this, and, by the way, I do have a good candidate for an operator for the winter as well. Any questions?
Mayor Pro Tem, would you like, oh, I'm sorry, Manager.
I just wanna clarify the reason we're coming to council for this. This is not an additional expenditure. The financial portion of the budget will not increase, but it is a anytime we change personnel, since that is a substantial part of the budgeting process, the definition of your personnel, we do need to come to council and get approval, even though we're not increasing the budget, because we're changing the type of personnel that we're having.
Thank you for the clarification. Mayor Pro Tem,
I make a motion to approve a change of one full-time position in joint utilities to a PRN position in streets and in joint utilities.
I'll second.
Roll call vote on item H. Mayor Pro Tem Hal,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
okay, moving on, I'd like to open discussion to approve the contract to take operational control, of the KAXS Colfax County Airport and Angel Fire. This has been going back and forth between our legal team and the county's legal team, and the latest revision, came before you just minutes before this meeting began. It's mostly legalese based on what you have seen, but this agreement would be for the Village of Angel Fire, to be the manager of the Colfax County Airport beginning January 1st, 2025. And it is a 20-year, we are asking for a 20-year commitment. As you all know, we're also in the process with the county of transferring the airport to the Village of Angel Fire. But that process has been proven to be slow and arduous, dealing with a lot of bureaucracies, biggest of which is the FAA. Again, the best case scenario, we are moving forward on that, but best case scenario, we're looking at a year, 18 months before that transfer could be complete in a good scenario. This would allow the Village of Angel Fire to take operation of the airport beginning in January. One reason that we're adamant about trying to get this done is because of these commercial flights that we're now receiving. We want to give our guests and our constituents that use that airport and that flight the best possible service. And we feel like the only way that we're gonna be able to make that happen is if we are in control. The county is, as you may know, having big budget shortfalls, and they're just gonna be able to keep the lights on if we aren't able to step in and manage this.
Will this also allow us to get funding? State funding?
Manager, everything currently would still go through the county. We would have access and still utilize the grants that have been issued and continue to apply for grants through the county. And quite frankly, if the transfer is complete, we still may apply for our grants through the county, for a number of different reasons. But yes, we will be able to have access to all those funds.
County will cooperate.
This, if approved, we would then submit to Colfax County for that commission to approve. So this is not a done deal if this is, but that would be the next step if this is approved this evening.
So my apology, Mr. Mayor, because my questions are based on what was in our original packet, and I haven't had an opportunity to look at what we were given just before council meeting. So I'm sure the manager can clarify as I ask my questions. But on the original copy, page 2, paragraph B, except as set forth herein, the village shall assume the existing obligations directly attributable to the airport equipment and property, including without limitations all employees, routine operational expenses, contracts with any operators, contracts with any engineering firms, and requirements of any grant agreements and grant assurances. Do we have knowledge of what these grant requirements and engineering requirements are?
Mr. Mayor, Council, yes, well, we do. Actually, we have two of our airport transfer committee members here, the chairman and Mr. Gilmer, and they have been working with the county to bring this information and identify these things, and the county's been providing them with that documentation. So we are aware of what's out there. One of the things I will tell you about the grants for the airport is the airport has a special arrangement with the FAA so that matching funds for the grants are not required to be paid in cash, but instead are paid in property. It's a fairly unique agreement that the FAA has with the Angel Fire Airport. There's only a few airports in the country that have that type of arrangement. But the bottom line is the matching portions of the grant, which would normally be an expenditure for a government agency, we don't see those with these federal grants that are occurring with the airport currently. That's not to say that future grants may not require some sort of monetary match or some sort of in-kind match. But currently, with the grants that we have outstanding and the grants we're looking to get in the near future, the FAA would utilize this property assignment process to cover the grant matches.
So how much property is left available if we were to do that in the future?
So about 70% of the property has been utilized in that over the last 2 decades.
Okay.
Well, if I can follow up on that, will that encumber, the property that is encumbered, is it where future hangars would go and would be a detriment to trying to do development out there? In other words, would that have to be made whole before any future development could go on that dirt?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, so right now, there is, where the hangar, because they currently have a $1.2 million grant to add hangars, and where they're looking to put those hangars is not on federal FAA land, but, what I've been told by the legal counsel for the county is that it shouldn't impede us utilizing the land. Even though the FAA owns that land, they have no use of intending the land for anything but airport operations. And so even though it may be an extra sign-off that we have to get, anything we do in that airport, FAA has to sign off on anyhow. So worst case scenario is they may have to give us an extra okay before we go do something. But quite frankly, we can't do anything they don't want us to do, even on the land that's not part of that, that's not designated that way.
Okay, my next question on page 3, under FAA requirements, go down to paragraph B. The village will assist the county in applying for grants and the administration of all grants received for the airport. I'd be a lot more comfortable if the village had the authority to go for grants.
So, Mr. Mayor, Council, the village we can go for our own grants. The issue is that, quite frankly, our median income is too high to qualify for many grants. Some of them, a lot of them, we would still qualify for. And that's why the mayor had mentioned we're trying to work out a way to continue to utilize the county's median income, which is well below levels required on most grants, and that's why the county so easily qualifies for these FAA grants. So we can go out and apply. The reason we're saying assist there is the grants are still gonna be in their name, but we probably will take over administration of those grants with the oversight of the county. We'll actually start doing the grant work ourselves instead of relying on them. But the grants are still the county, so we have to be careful in the legal language. We can't say they're gonna become our grants. They're not. They're the county's grants. But we will assist them by doing probably 90 to 95% of the administrative work related to those grants.
And just to point out, that's one of the reasons too that we would like to have the control of the airport. Is a small example is the village of Angel Fire, probably 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, dedicated lodger's tax money to be spent at Colfax County Airport. And, I'm sorry?
2021.
Oh, sorry, 2021, so it's been over 3 years ago. And it was, forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was $20,000, $30,000?
$30,000.
$30,000
Yeah.
that you approved for the Colfax County to spend at that airport. That money had not been spent yet. We reached out to, Manager Gore, with the county and asked if we could take control of spending the money that we dedicated to the airport. So recently, we made some improvements just on a concrete walkway from the airport to the tarmac. I hope I'm using the correct language here. And we'll be using the remainder of the monies to freshen up the interior of the airport. But these grant monies that have been awarded to the airport for these new hangars is kind of in the same scenario, where we're afraid that it just may not get done. And the county just currently does not have the bandwidth to give a lot of attention to this airport up here. So those are just two examples.
Okay, go to page 4, paragraph D. The village shall prepare and submit all necessary documentation required for maintenance on county equipment at the airport that is performed each month. The village shall prepare a detailed invoice describing the maintenance performed, and the village will perform the maintenance only after the county authorizes the village to perform. And does that also mean that the county is gonna reimburse the village for that?
Mr. Mayor, Council, one of the primary reasons that the county is interested in giving us this control is to alleviate the expensive operation of the airport, and it is something that the village is gonna have to take on. We're primarily talking about expenses that, and in this case, there's other language in here. They only have to give us permission for the equipment that they continue to own. So they're gonna leave all their equipment there, we'll be able to operate it and utilize that equipment, but the equipment will remain in their name that they currently have there until we actually do the transfer of the property. And I think we want that because the process of transferring all of that equipment into our name is a lengthy process that could delay this significantly, the operational management part significantly. So all we're saying is that when we go do work on their equipment that they own, that's in their name, that we will get permission to do it. Now, it doesn't preclude the village from investing in our own equipment or utilizing our own equipment in efforts to improve the operations of the airport, and the county will have no say over any equipment that we own, that we utilize. But this is, if we were in their shoes and we own that equipment and we're liable for that equipment, we would want to have last say on something that's being done with that equipment. And to be honest with you, there is equipment there that we've used, especially the tanker they use to gas airplanes. It's a nice piece of equipment. There is some equipment that we, quite frankly, have better equipment, and we're probably gonna end up using our own equipment in a lot of cases. But this is something that, you know, we don't know, I don't wanna give up any equipment that they have out there and fear of, maybe we really need that, we don't think we do now, but maybe we do. So the deal we negotiated is we would retain all the equipment, and then if it gets to a point where we don't want their equipment, we can just tell them to come get it. And there is no, because they own it, there will be no legal process we'll have to go through for them to take that equipment off. But what we will be taking over is, the intent of this is complete operational control of the airport. That said, they still have ownership under this of the equipment, some of the equipment and the land and the buildings, the real property. And if it was us, I would ask for the same language from them.
Okay, I don't see anything in here about the possibility of bringing in a fixed-based operator. Is that still possible?
Yes, it is, and it is in the language. I'd have to go pull, where it does give us the ability to, I can get that for you, Mayor Pro Tem, but there is language in here that allows us to do contracting, and a fixed-based operator would be a contractor.
Okay,
So it doesn't say fixed-based operator specifically, but there is language that allows us to go out and do contracting that is required for the operation of the airport.
and as the mayor mentioned a while ago about hangars, will we be able to go ahead with the hangars or more hangars?
That is certainly our intention, yes. Yeah, and yes, the short answer is yes, we can go for it with the money that we have available from those grants in this agreement.
So the thing I've been asking for all this time is financials. And
So-
I have no idea what this is gonna cost us.
So, I can tell you that the cost estimate, and, keep in mind, we have to take this to them next for them to approve. And if they approve it, then I'll have to bring, a budget in for y'all to approve. But I will tell you the net cost on this is, about $275,000 a year, all in. And the revenue on this is about $240,000 a year. So right now, it's operating at a net loss of between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. We do believe with an investment, that we're willing to make, that we can make this actually a profitable operation.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilman Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Gilmer, if you would please come to the podium.
Hi, my name is Jeff Gilmer. I'm a non-voting member of the committee. Manager Weir, Mayor Lindsay, all of Mr. Howe. One of the things that I was going to say, on average, to answer your question about the trucks and the maintenance, on average, what we're looking at is we go in and we check the fuel filters on the trucks, make sure that the fuel, there's various items like that that are fairly low, and outside of a catastrophic mechanical failure, most of those types of expenses are pretty low. One of the reasons why I came up was just to say thank you for taking this initiative. When I moved here, I've been up here for 8 years. I moved here permanently. I retired from the Federal Aviation Administration. And I moved up here, and part of it was looking at this airport going, oh my gosh, this is Jackson Hole, Wyoming 30 years ago. The potential of the impact of this airport, which I worked with SkyWest Airlines in my last position. SkyWest is the main carrier in and out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I would tell you that village council would tell you that airport is the economic driver that began the renaissance of what we know as Jackson Hole today. And I don't know if you realize it, but Jackson Hole has probably some of the highest housing prices in America in that area. It's kind of like everybody goes up there. So with our wonderful resort and all of the effort that they've put into it, with this village, I got excited and was willing to kind of step away from my retirement and say, I'll throw my hat in. And there was discussion about that. So I'm really here, if nothing else, to thank you. There are those of us here that will endeavor to do all we can to see that this is done well, that it's managed well, and that that turnaround from a negative to a positive happens fairly rapidly. We did have an instance several years ago. The airport was being managed, and we saw a fairly quick uptick in revenue. And so that gives us hope that that can come back, but there's some things that need to be addressed. I also want to I'm going to thank Mayor Lindsay, Councilor Humbert, when you talked about trying to get something done for a long time and you finally got there. 4 years. 4 years I complained about this, people having to walk off of the ramp to get to the front door through the mud and the rock. And this gentleman, when we finally got his ear, he had that walkway started in 4 days and it was finished in 7. So I'm personally thank you, because that's a great win. It's a beautiful place right now, and that portends to me that this village is interested in making this airport a jewel. And one of the other things that hasn't been discussed when we're talking about those grants, and we're looking at the village of Angel Fire, the airport is Moreno Valley. And so when we look at this, we look at the impact at Eagle Nest, we look at the impact at Red River, we look at the impact down in even in Mora, and these areas that all these people come in and out of. And I think once that grant process starts within there, that will be a consideration also. In addition to that, Mr. Howe, we're looking at DoD grants. And the idea is that this wonderful airport, as we see all the time, the military uses this airport to do approaches. They come in and they'll fly. You'll see the airplanes and you'll wonder why they're circling around here. The C-130 squad, I mean, we have them all come in here. There is a potential. I'm just saying it's, again, something we look at, that the Department of Defense says Angel Fire is, I forgot the actual word that they use, but it's a special airport for us. And therefore grant monies can also be allocated from them. So it's not only FAA, New Mexico, DoD. That's not on the plate. I wanted to bring that up because to answer any questions, people worried about that financial stream. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Any questions?
Manager Weir?
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem,
Thank you,
just to
Mr.
answer your question specifically.
I'm just gonna say thank you.
No. On page 2, section 2, paragraph B, it reads, except as set, and this is in the new one, so I don't think there were many changes made to this in your version, but it says, except as set forth herein, the village shall assume the existing obligations directly attributable to the airport equipment and property, including without limitation all employees, routine operational expenses, and this is what you're asking, contracts with any operators, contracts with any engineering firms, and requirements of any grant agreements and agreement assurances that shall promptly notify the county of any major operational issues or obligations that could impact the county's interest or investment in the airport. So that language contracts with any operators specifically addresses the ability to have an FBO.
Director Epler?
I'll keep it short, I just thought it was relevant, sorry, good evening again, Mayor and Council. In regards to equipment and operations, I had the opportunity to go out and visit with the fine gentleman, Mr. Matthews, who's taking care of the airport out there until recently by himself. And we talked about snow scenarios, this was shortly after the snow we got in early November. And, you know, through his explanation, I could see the burden on him over there, you know, he's gotta wait till it stops snowing before he can start clearing it. And it took him 2 very long days to clear the runway, okay? When there was first mention about, possibly, assisting at the airport with snow removal, I had a concern that it would affect our ability to, clear snow from the roads. But after speaking with him and discovering that he's gotta wait till the storm basically completely stops to go out and clear it, so I saw obviously, more often than not, our opportunity is gonna be, we're gonna have all the roads done, and the day after, when it's time to go over and help Mr. Matthews, if I gotta throw 6 plow trucks, 3 motor graders, and a loader and a blower at it, we can be talking about hours instead of days to clear that runway. I do wanna mention that in my observation of the, limited pieces of equipment that he did have were very well taken care of. And he obviously takes a lot of pride in his equipment. So I mentioned that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mayor Pro Tem, would you, please make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve a contract to take operational control of KAXX Colfax County Airport and Angel Fire.
Second.
Roll call on item I. Mayor Pro Tem Hal,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Okay. At this time, we'll move on to item J. Public hearing will now open. The Village of Angel Fire presents the following ordinance to the public. Number 1, ordinance 2024-06, Title 3 modifications to lodger's tax applied to short-term nightly rentals. This is now open for public comment.
If anybody wants a copy of that ordinance, I have a copy here if you'd like.
Mr. Curry?
Mayor, council, manager, mainly I'm here to talk about number 3, but I did wanna say this is a long overdue revamp of this ordinance, the lodger's tax one. It mainly is housekeeping, and also to dovetail with number 3. I will point out, number 3-3-5C, which pertains to fees, is mainly related to number 3, and that those, if we were to look at, that one, you need to look at both of them at the same time, that edit of it. I'm Owen Curry, I don't know if I said it, but this is about the lodger's tax. I'm also the lodger's tax chairman, and it was exciting to hear 4 different things talked about at the lodger tax funding at this meeting.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yeah. I'm sorry, yeah, Mr. Nelson.
My name is Carl Nelson. I own and operate a business here in Angel Fire. I've lived here 35 years. Haven't been to a council meeting in quite a while. What a exciting event to come to tonight. A lot of things going on. It's an exciting time for us. Thank you, all the council and everybody that's putting all their efforts into a real aggressive agenda for our village. I think a lot of people appreciate it. I think I think your agenda for workforce housing is appropriate and pertinent to our community. I visit a lot of resort communities, every year through my life, and, I've been friends with, people in resort communities that are workers that live in employee housing, and I realize how important it is for those communities that they have that. So, thank you for bringing it on. I hope you're successful.
Thank you. If nothing, further. Ordinance 2024-06, Title III modifications is closed for public comment. Moving on to item 2, ordinance 2024-07, Title IV, adopting 2021 Fire Code edition of the International, that should read International Fire Code. Ordinance 2024-07, Title III modifications, open for public comment. Chief Vance, if you would like to come just shed a little light on the reasons for adopting this fire code.
Good evening. The reason why we decided to go to 2021 code, we could go up to 2024 code. However, we reached out to the state of New Mexico and the State Fire Marshal's Office for some help with inspections. We have currently about 600 businesses in the village of Angel Fire who will be requiring fire inspections coming after January in the year 2025. Right now, we don't have a fire inspector on duty in a full-time position. We have 2 gentlemen that, one is part-time and one is full-time, that are certified to do fire inspections, and they've been doing it out of their good graces just to kind of help out with that and coming to help out whenever we have an emergency situation. So the State Fire Marshal's Office has agreed to assist us in our fire inspections. We have a few right now that are overdue, about 8 of them, that they're gonna come out and kind of do a fell swoop and do those overdue inspections, and then continue to help us throughout the future years until we do get a fire inspector hired on full-time. So in order for them to come up and help us, they've required that we come up to the standard of 2021. Some of the past inspections have been going back to as early as the 2009 and 2015 edition. Currently, what I found in records, that we're on the 2015 standard. So we're just trying to come up to 2021 standard, and there aren't entirely a lot of changes, although, you know, here and there are, but they're all in the interest of public safety. Any questions?
Mr. Curry?
I mean, is it, I was just wondering when you say 2021 standards, so like if it's something that, it's an older facility, is it gonna have to come up to the standards?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've asked that as well, and as long as you're not changing business designation, according to the original intent of the business. So if you have currently you're a restaurant, say, and you want to change to a childcare, you will fall under the childcare and have to come up to the 2021 edition of the childcare services. But as long as you continue to operate as that example as a restaurant, you would be grandfathered into the previous standard.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I sell a lot of condos to people, and they totally rely on Airbnb and so forth. And how much is this gonna restrict, you know, the mom and pop that rents their condo or their house? Is that gonna change for them?
I don't see any significant impact to that. I see the changes to short-term rentals and that sort of thing governing that type of building. But anything, one thing to point out is the fire department does not do routine residential fire inspections. So anything that falls under a residential building, R3, R2, R1, would fall under the same criteria as it always has, and that's usually met at time of the build. So if a condo unit was built in 2015, it would have to be built at 2015 standards. There are a couple of examples of buildings that went above and beyond those standards, but as far as being held to that standard, as long as they haven't changed designation, they would fall under that code in which they were built. And that's Universal Building Code or International Building Code, and not fire code. So again, any fire inspection would be for commercial use, for business use, and not for residential.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Chief. At this time, ordinance 2024-07, Title III, modifications is closed for public comment. Move on to item 3, ordinance 2024-08, Title 12, modification to include lodging in the provision of short-term rentals. Ordinance 2024-08, modifications open for public comment. Mr. Curry?
Mayor, council, and manager, Owen Curry. I've read this ordinance, it's a new ordinance, extensively. And really, you know, there's a lot of good aspects of it. Everybody agrees safety is a big concern. But I have 4 big concerns with it. I know that y'all have all received copies of those concerns, but I'll just run them over real quick. 12-1-4B, it's really the permit fees. It's kind of left open as a separate resolution, which is, you know, a concern. There's municipalities like Taos and Santa Fe that, you know, don't really want short-term rentals because they have other industries besides tourism. And they charge high amounts, whereas municipalities like Red River and Ruidoso, who function and thrive on short-term rentals, they charge smaller fees, $50 to $100. And so it's a little bit difficult to kind of support something that you don't know what the fees are going to be, because a lot of people who purchase properties here and they're stakeholders in this community purchase them and depend on some degree of short-term rental to help defray the cost of ownership.
And if you'd like, Mr. Curry, I'd be happy to address items as we continue.
Yeah, that's great.
So, per that, we felt, the manager and I felt that it would be best to keep the permit fees in a separate resolution, so that if they were to ever change, it wouldn't require an ordinance change, but a resolution. We agree that short-term rentals are a very large contributor to our local economy, and we are not wanting to discourage them whatsoever. This ordinance is way overdue. I challenge you to find any community that has the level of short-term rentals that we do that does not have a short-term rental ordinance. I will tell you too that my intention for those fees, once they're established, will be to help offset and even subsidize our workforce housing projects, and also to other expenses that the village, as we discussed earlier in this meeting, water rights, for instance. We would like to allocate those funds specifically to help offset the costs that the village will be incurring for those programs. We do not want them to be burdensome. We don't want to discourage or even lose short-term rentals with our fees. So that will be another debate. You and I have had discussions on those numbers, and I think that we can find something reasonable in the middle.
I'll go ahead and move on to number 2 was 12-1-5B. It's the village included verbiage in this section, which is an occupancy section that includes International Fire Code, the one that was discussed in number 2. And, you know, there's two different, there's an occupancy metric that's in there that's a 5 per full bath and 2 per half bath. And doing our math on our book of business, which is probably about a quarter of the short-term rentals, you know, that wouldn't be as much of an impact. But if someone was to more slide into the International Building Code, which, they kind of dovetail a little bit, they kind of take from each other, that, you know, that would be a different and maybe a more significant impact. And just having those two different types of comments in that section could be something that someone might be able to use in the future to limit occupancy to an extent that wasn't, these properties, when they were built, had expectations of.
It doesn't, I understand your concern, it doesn't fully address it, but there is in that section, the final sentence, nothing herein precludes the owner from seeking a variance for unique properties.
Right.
I know we have a lot of bunk rooms and, you know, interesting creative ways to get more bedding into what are vacation homes essentially, so does that not allay your concerns from a variance perspective, or?
Well, I mean, it depends on who's in power, I guess, you know.
And Manager Weir, one moment, but I think too, the way it's written, the International Fire Code, back to Mr. Moon's question, you know, it would address, more commercial buildings, residential buildings under the International Fire Code, and Chief Vance, please correct me if I'm wrong. There's very little, restriction in the International Fire Code as occupancy goes. In other words, no one's to say you can't have a family of 12 living in a one-bedroom, one-bathroom home.
Right.
The short-term rentals do fall under, as far as condos and residential homes fall under that residential category. So we're actually upping the limitations by adding an occupancy standard of the 5 persons per bathroom and 2 per half bath.
And that's where I would just ask you to consider, in lieu of what you're saying and the fire chief said, just removing that from that section.
Manager Weir?
I just want to confirm what you said, Mr. Mayor, is exactly correct. And that we confirm both with our legal counsel as well as the state fire marshal that short-term rentals do not qualify as commercial property and would be subject to the International Fire Code's residential property restrictions, which are things, Mr. Curry, you told me you guys already do. It's smoke detectors, and egress requirements for sleeping quarters, and it's some pretty basic stuff. As a matter of fact, in that code, there is no occupancy language, and that's why we had to add it separately in here, because the International Fire Code for residential properties does not have an occupancy section.
Yeah, and that's all about the safety aspect, you know, we're all about. It's just, as far as in the occupancy section, maybe that verbiage doesn't even need to be there then.
And to alleviate your concern, in order to change that occupancy to something more strict, the ordinance would have to be revisited anyway. So if there's a future administration that chose to revisit, the ordinance have to be revisited at that time, regardless.
Okay.
And everything we do is subject to that.
Okay. I mean, is there a reason for it to have the International Fire Code in this section then?
Our attorneys felt like it was important to have it mentioned.
Mainly because, Mr. Mayor, mainly because in our, on the application for the permit, we're gonna make sure that people know they have to have the smoke detectors and.
The checklist.
I'm sorry?
Just a checklist.
Yeah, the checklist, and those things are defined within the fire code. And so, as opposed to trying to rewrite the whole fire code into this ordinance, we just reference it.
Yeah, cause I mean, number 4, I was gonna mention here is 2-1-5F, which is fire inspection requirements, and I guess that's where, that's kind of addressed the IFC. So I'm not really, you know, cause in there, those are requirements, you know, we work really hard, like you mentioned, to make sure that our properties are all safe, 2 egresses, fire extinguishers that are certified annually, smoke detectors, CO detectors, and I'm all for, you know, making sure everyone else keeps their property safe, but, you know, some of those things in homes and condos, I mean, they were built in the 70s, 80s.
It's gonna be a basic checklist, and I think, after our private discussions, and what you require from your properties, it's gonna resemble what we're trying to avoid. Obviously, carbon monoxide, we wanna have, not avoid, but we wanna have working smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, fire extinguishers. What we don't want is bunk beds in closets and things like that. So, there will be a checklist provided, that will need to be gone through. Chief Vance has agreed to allow applicants to self-inspect, and there will be do's and don'ts. The fire department will reserve the right to do random inspections, to just make sure that people are complying. But what we don't wanna have is overburdensome timeframes, hinder folks from, and exorbitant costs moving forward. It's gonna be basic safety that I think your company already adheres to.
Okay, yeah, and that's probably the only other aspect about that is the timely nature as far as if people are already in operation, not saying, oh, you can't operate until you do this inspection. And, you know,
And that's exactly what we wanna avoid.
yeah, and this whole ordinance is coming probably at the worst possible moment as far as, you know, where next week is beginning to be.
Somebody drug their feet getting this put together.
Busiest
Mr.
time.
Curry. You've had 8 months to help us get this done.
Hey,
And,
I submitted what I thought was a very good ordinance and, you know.
and that's where we got started. So here we are today.
Probably the fourth one now is 12-1-5D, which is parking. And this is the one that I think is just really, unworkable from the standpoint that it says that, every dwelling must have 2 parking places per dwelling plus 1 per bedroom requirement, so, literally no single condo or townhome community in Angel Fire would meet this limitation. You know, some of the houses would, the majority of them might, but just to say because the house was built without those kind of requirements that you're not allowed to have your property in a vacation rental, versus just using our current village ordinances that don't allow for parking on the road. I've personally gotten a ticket for doing that. I'm not sure why we need something like this, which is not really workable with our community.
And I would have to agree with that statement, that the goal of the parking is to keep people from parking on the roads. And I think the way it's written is burdensome not only for the applicant, but also for the village to enforce. And so the ultimate goal is to keep people from parking on the streets. We all know why in the wintertime, it's hell on Director Epler, to get the roads cleared. And there's also safety concerns that Chief Hogrief have identified from parking on the roads. That is the ultimate goal. And so I would encourage the council to look at that and simplify that. Manager Weir?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council. So, based on feedback that we received since, the ordinance originally went out to the public, we have had legal counsel draw up additional language in regards to that issue. It is in, the version that is in your printed packet. It is different than what was in the original electronic packet that was submitted to the council, last week. But this is what the language that we added to address the condo units. It says, for properties within multifamily zones, parking shall include any designated on-site parking plus arranged, dedicated, and adequate off-site parking. Off-site parking plans must be submitted for code administrator approval. So basically what this means is that the condo units, multifamily housing, they'll be able to use whatever parking lots they currently have designated. And if those parking lots are not sufficient, they will be required to have an off-site location for additional parking. And that will have to be brought before the code enforcement officer and approved, which as long as it's reasonable parking somewhere, we're not gonna disapprove it. We just need to know where it is, because if we're dealing with the citizenry or with tourists that are parking on the streets and we can't plow the roads or potentially causing some sort of hazard, we need to be able to go to them and say, oh, look, you're staying in this unit, this is where you're supposed to park. And so we added that language to accommodate that concern.
Would the metric still be 2 per dwelling plus 1 per bedroom? Does it?
No, it changed in the multifamily. So Manager Weir's point, but to that point, I personally feel like the legalese is all there, but the goal is to keep people from parking on the roads. I would like to shift the burden in the ordinance to the property manager, to the condo association, to get the message to the tourists that they cannot park in the road.
And
If
that's
they
what,
make other arrangements, we don't have to know about it, it would be good to know. But the goal is to keep them out of the road, and I don't think we need to make this overly complicated, in my opinion.
yeah, and I would agree from the standpoint that, let's say, a 3-bedroom house only had 3 parking spaces. Like, we would tell them, there's only 3 parking spaces. If
Right.
you're bringing more than 3 cars, you need to find alternative arrangements, you can't park on the street.
And that, and again, that's your responsibility as
Yeah.
property manager, the Airbnb owner, yes. Those are the type of things that I would like to, when it comes to parking, maybe help simplify for both our sake.
So, the sentence in question, the minimum number of required on-site parking spaces for short-term rental units is 2 per dwelling plus 1 per bedroom. It is not specified whether that applies to multifamily or single-family. Is that language still in your latest draft?
No, that is in the latest draft, and, let's see, on-site parking and short-term rental located, and,
Yeah.
so this is new language. It says, on-site parking, required, all parking associated with short-term rentals for single-family homes located in residentially zoned lands shall be entirely on-site in a garage, carport, or driveway. No parking shall be permitted in yards or on, any site not designated or customarily used for parking. There is no on-street parking allowed. The minimum number of required on-site parking spaces for short-term rental units for single-family homes is 2 per dwelling unit plus 1 per bedroom. Then it goes on to say for properties within multifamily zones, which I previously read to you.
Well, so the single-family language you just read, we have several homes on downhill slopes that have 2 parking spaces total. They may be 5-bedroom homes, so are those homes precluded from ever being short-term rentals per that language?
They would have to make arrangements for enough parking, in order to rent those houses under this language, that is correct.
And as the way it's written, that manager is absolutely correct. My point is, if we just tell, there's no on-street parking, and it's the owner's requirement to notify their guests, you can have, if you meet the occupancy requirements, but this is also how many parking spots there are, period, to avoid on-street parking.
Because, Mr. Mayor, I can tell you, and I think Chief Ogriff can attest to it, that we had people that come into a 3-bedroom home with 6 cars and they're parking on the street, and especially in winter conditions, it becomes an extreme hazard.
For sure.
And, so we have to have some level of control over that, because you can tell people, oh, you know, you can't do it, but then the visitors come in and they do it anyhow. A lot of times we found, in many situations, short-term renters will come in and rent something and, not give the full details, let's say, to the property management. The property management has no idea that they were bringing in 6 cars. So there needs to be, something that we can do to enforce this, and there needs to be, so we need to have some sort of leverage to enforce.
I don't disagree. I've turned in a short-term rental across the street from me for 3 trucks and trailers and side-by-sides all over. I mean, I'm right there with you that for all the reasons we know, we don't want the cars on the street. But I guess my point is that same home, as the way this is written, cannot even apply for a short-term rental permit.
Well, it would have to provide,
They could make
again, the way
alternative
it's written,
parking.
it would have to provide an alternative parking plan.
Well, if you brought a van that holds 12 people, that's 1 vehicle.
Yeah.
I mean, so,
Yeah, so I appreciate the manager's and the attorney's language, but the ultimate goal is to keep people from parking on the street. Yeah. And I really feel like it's just much simpler to say, no parking on the street.
Right. We don't have to say that, we already say that in our,
It's mentioned in here, but I wanna make sure that it's in here, too, so that it can be referred to for the short-term rental owner. They don't have to read our entire ordinance, they can read this particular ordinance. Would be my, I think a good compromise for myself and Mr. Craig, not even a compromise, I think we want the same thing. I don't wanna create more work for him and our staff, with these parking plans and trying to chase them down. If they're parked on the street, they're gonna get a ticket or towed, or run the risk thereof.
Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, we've removed the requirement for a parking plan. What I read is the new language, that we provided, so it doesn't, it no longer includes a parking plan.
But would it get rid of the 2 and 1 verbiage for veterans?
That's up to the council.
I think,
Again, a 15-passenger van
right.
can occupy
And I will say one thing is that I see plenty of people where the owners are having people over and they're parking on the street. That's when I got my ticket, is I was over at somebody's house and for an event and was on the street and they gave me a ticket. So, I mean, I don't think, I want people to kind of limit the concept that the only time anybody's parking on the street is because it's a short-term renter in town, or anybody speeding in the road, it's a short-term renter.
But it's because we're addressing specifically a short-term
Right.
rental ordinance. To Manager Weir's point, we don't have to put that in this ordinance because it's already in ordinance.
Right.
But I wanted to make that information.
I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. We want to make this as easy as we can to
Right.
accomplish the goal of getting the cars off the road, but we also don't want to make it so cumbersome that we have language that can't be satisfied somewhere along the way.
So just for clarification for the process and for the audience, this is gonna come back to council the second time with new language. What,
Not necessarily, it could, it certainly could. We could, if we're deleting language, we could make that amendment this evening, when we go to vote on this, ordinance.
okay, I guess I'm not keeping up here then, because in the past, we've always voted on an ordinance twice.
So we did have,
It's not a legal requirement. The legal requirement is that we actually take an extra step in our process in that we ask for permission to post an ordinance. That request for permission is not required by statute. What is required is that we have to give 14-day notice that we're gonna have an ordinance. That notice only has to be a summary. It doesn't have to be the ordinance itself. It has to be a summary, but in that summary, we have to include how somebody can get a copy of the full ordinance. And so that has to be advertised in a paper of general circulation 14 days in advance of a public hearing. The public hearing has to be obviously in a setting where the public is allowed to come in and speak. And then once the public hearing is completed, and then we can vote on that. And just like you could, like if you had a contract and you wanted to make changes to the contract, you can vote to amend. You'd have to vote to amend first, and then you could vote to approve the amended. And then after that vote, we would have to publish the amended ordinance again. But the ordinance wouldn't go into effect for 5 days after that publication. And that's statute.
so, Mayor Pro Tem, this could be, passed this evening with amendments. As far as, Mr. Curry's concerned in these comments that we've had, I don't think we haven't discussed any other amendments other than perhaps amending the parking, portion of it. And it's basically to strike language, as I'm proposing, to just avoid on-street parking. There is, and if there's any other questions on the parking, did you have any other concerns in addition to the parking?
The only one was the one that was brought up to me, and it was 12.1.5C, which is, it references advertising. And, like we put signs at our properties just so that people know who to call if there's something happening. I'm assuming when they say advertising, they mean they don't want, one of those big advertising signs saying short-term rental, like the ones you see in the front of the businesses, and not just letting people know. Because frankly, to be a property manager in the state of New Mexico, you have to be a licensed realtor. And we adhere to the realtor signs representing our fiduciary, contract that we have with, the homeowner.
And you're also, I believe, the majority of your properties inside Angel Fire Resort are governed by the Architectural Control Committee as well.
Yes.
Typically.
And and those adhere to that signage. I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't somehow saying you can't have the signs that, you know, statutes already allow.
I don't believe that's the intention there. One question I do have for you, and one thing that I would like to see, that I did, I guess, Manager, we're a question for you first, and that is, I would like to see, as part of this, a requirement to provide, at the minimum, a general liability policy when applying for a short-term rental permit. Mr. Curry, since you're in the industry, I mean, are there any other suggestions as far as insurance that might be,
And typically people just have homeowners insurance and, you know, it covers them for short-term rentals, so.
as long as they, but that's between them and their carrier, but as far as, since we are issuing a business, not a business, it's not a business, well, in some cases it is. So we're offering a permit, I feel like that would be something that I would like to have the council manager consider having as part of this, that there's some form of general liability insurance policy.
I have no idea what that would cost homeowners.
And I think too, the way I see it is if you're, so I would assume that your business carries general liability. And so if it's under a property manager, that would be sufficient. But individual self-managing, I would like to see a general liability policy personally.
I mean, I couldn't really speak to like an individual, what it would take, or, you know, I know people are having difficult times just getting homeowners insurance, much less trying to get a general liability policy. So, I mean, I couldn't speak to that, but.
I've never had any issue, I've never, done one for a short-term rental, but anytime I'm looking for a general liability policy, I haven't had any issue ever getting that issued. So again, Manager Ware, it's a question for you, is that something that you feel like, I mean, to me, it's something that I would feel better at protecting the village when issuing these permits, that we, have that layer of protection.
And, I thought at one point you had told me that you require liability insurance for your renters.
Well, I mean, homeowners insurance is liability insurance, so I mean, for them, so I mean, I would make the assumptions that, I know my liability, general liability insurance is $18,000, so, a year, so I don't know what it would cost, but it would just become, I'm making the assumption, excessive for an individual homeowner. I think if you have a homeowner's policy and you have short-term rental coverage, I think that would be the same.
And perhaps that would be sufficient, but I wanna have that requirement. So again, this doesn't concern you as a property manager, because I know you have those policies in place, and we would need to have a copy when you apply for your, clients. But, outside of that, it doesn't have to be a general liability, but if it does show the short-term rental rider attached to that, I think that might be sufficient, as well. But I would like to see some kind of insurance requirement, added to this.
I can do the research on that and get back to the council, and, I'll, find out what is going on in other government agencies. Our legal counsel has, done these types of ordinances for multiple, government agencies throughout the state. Of course, this is the shortest one that she told me she's written, because, most of them are trying to restrict. We're one of the unique, government agencies that's not trying to actually restrict the use of short-term rentals. So, we'll find out what other language is out there for you, and I can get back to the council on that.
This is an important ordinance, and as important as it is to get it in place, I'd like to make the suggestion when it comes time to approve it, I think we should revisit it one more time and possibly with the resolution for the permit fees as well. That's just my personal, take on this. We wanna get it right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I agree, that would work fine. I mean, the reason that I didn't present I actually have a draft of the, resolution that would do the fees, but, I wasn't sure how this would change.
Right.
And then we would have to change the resolution, so I just thought if we could get the ordinance done first, we'd follow with the resolution, on the fees and stuff. Because we do wanna keep fees out of ordinances, just because it's so hard to change an ordinance, and resolutions can be changed much easier. But, if that's what you'd like, I'm more than happy at the next meeting to look this up, address the concerns that you've expressed. I do need direction to, are we looking to strike, 215D? Or are we looking to modify that? And then, on 215C, where it says, there any advertising mechanism, do we need clarity on that? I mean, I do think the intent is exactly what the mayor said. We don't want the big balloons going in people's yard, hey, come rent me, type of thing. That was the intent there. We didn't mean to, like, I know you have your signs up and other, property managers do. This is a, Angel Fire, this is resort property rental or whatever. Our intent was not to impede that. And again, I don't think that this language would, because you are following, the zoning ordinances related to real estate signage. So that was not our intent. Our intent is to get, somebody putting up some big gaudy sign or something that says, come rent me.
I would say for D, the parking's, and I'm reading off of mine, but I think if you terminated that section after there is no on-street parking and simply followed up with, parking violations shall be caused to revoke short-term rental permits, and then dump everything after that with the calculations is a much cleaner math.
I'd agree with that.
Chief Holgrave?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council Manager. Talking about the parking thing, I just want to remind everyone that we have the Uniform Traffic Code adopted by ordinance that already has parking violations enumerated in that. So perhaps under the portion that says no on-street parking, and add to that in violation of that Uniform Traffic Ordinance. I don't recall, it's like 12.9.12.1 or whatever it would be, to give specific of what is interfering with traffic flow, even without signage. It still can be a violation if it interferes with the motoring lane of traffic. So I would just wanted to suggest that.
Mr. Mayor, Chief, if you could, email that to me tomorrow.
Got it.
Thank you.
Do you do any, I'm sorry, go ahead. Do you do any I saw people squeeze 3 cars onto a cantilevered timber frame parking structure that was meant for 2. So I've seen people get real creative in brave ways that I wouldn't attempt, but I assume when you're renting, if you had a house with a cantilevered wooden parking structure, do you have any requirements there where you're telling them don't try to put, heavy duty trucks or,
Yeah, in our particular case, we would have either declined to take on the property,
Listing.
or we would list, all of ours, we list how many parking spaces there are already in there. So we already put that information, because we want to be upfront with people, because people ask us, well, how, we're bringing 5 cars, you say there are only 4. We say, well, there's only room for, there's only room for the 4, not 5. And so, I mean, I think as long as people put those in their listings, or, they make those decisions whether or not they want to manage them. But I think houses like that, I mean, that have limited space, I do support the changing of it, of getting rid of that metric, but simply just telling them you can only park 2 cars, so. But I think, people should be allowed, they might have bought that home, they may need that short-term rental income to, you know, defray the cost enough to keep the property, and the idea of just telling somebody that, yeah, you're gonna have to sell.
And to Owen's point, I don't, we're not villainizing short-term rentals. Again, they're a major contributor to our economy. We need them. There's not enough lodging in town without them. And to his point, just the costs of, the homes in the valley, as we all know, have escalated, by as much as 100% or more in the last several years. People's salaries have not, and they still wanna be a part of this community and have a place here, but some of them, have to have that short-term rental income to be able to own a property here. And, so, again, I just wanna make sure that everybody understands that we love and support our short-term rentals. We just wanna, finally get our arms around this. This is something that was, not this particular ordinance, but one similar to it was drafted and ready to be approved back in 2019 and never went anywhere. So it's something that's just way overdue for a community, that has as many short-term rentals as we do.
Well, great, I'd be interested in giving input if any alterations.
One of the questions I'll probably have too, once this gets adopted is, what's the time frame for owners to come into compliance and submit for their permits to, and I'd like Chief Vance to probably talk a little bit about that, owners being able to self-inspect their properties, because it's gonna be a rollout that's gonna, you could take a year or more to be able to inspect all the properties that are on the short-term rental, so I wanna know how that's gonna be rolled out and thought out ahead of time, so that you don't have people that are just waiting on an inspection to be able to rent their homes.
Manager Weir.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Weeks. So we intentionally left out of this ordinance a rollout plan or specifics because we don't know everything that's gonna be thrown at us. But I can tell you this, at the mayor's direction, we have no intention of starting fining process for this until there's been adequate time for people to adjust. You're right, it could take up to a year. We may look at this in 6 months and everybody jumps on board and we say, okay. But there will be, this will come before council before we start to actually enforce anything as far as fines go or anything like that. But what we do need to get started with enforcing is lodger's tax payments, because we do our system host compliance that we've acquired and or developed, not implemented yet, but developed, indicates to us there are as many as 600 residents currently doing short-term rentals that are not paying lodger's tax. That is something we'll enforce day one. This other ordinance, we realize that we are gonna have to, it's gonna be new, and we're not gonna be unreasonable. We're gonna try and make sure that, that we treat our public fairly, and that the council has input into when we would actually start doing any rigid enforcement.
And to alleviate some of the other concerns, Jeff, and then before Chief Vance comes, again, that was the reason he suggested, and we latched on to the self-inspection. We don't want a backlog of inspections. Chief Vance will reserve the right to do random inspections. But we don't wanna make this a difficult process. We don't wanna financially burden anyone or hold up their permit.
Yeah, and that's why I brought it up. I don't know how many people are zooming in tonight, but that's probably one of the.
Yeah, we wanna work with them to roll this out. I'll also say that I've directed, Director Ralph to, get on the village website on the main page and create a bold heading, on the very main page that will, answer questions and navigate people through this process.
I just wanted to add one more thing. I would like to have some verbiage about the sports facility fee that.
It's been added.
It has been added.
Because that, maybe half the people that pay lodger's tax are paying the sports facility, and so we just need to make sure they are paying both of them.
Mr. Moon?
Yes, I have a comment, maybe a suggestion.
If you don't mind, Mr. Moon, if you would just come to the podium.
If I can get up. I just have a suggestion, and I'm just thinking, while we're talking here on the general liability, policy, I think that's gonna be a non-starter for a lot of people, because, once you ask for that, you know, you may have to meet inspections and so forth. So, and I don't wanna kill the golden goose here, and, you know, but I think if you might consider while you're discussing this and talking about an ordinance, what about the village, paying out of the, lodger's tax, a general liability that will cover, general liability policy that will cover, short-term rentals? And that wouldn't put the burden on the renters, and then you would know you had coverage. If you say, well, you have to have coverage, I mean, people just won't comply like they park on the street.
Well, again, that's the reason for the ordinance though, is so that we have some, mechanisms to, enforce. So, again, I'm not suggesting,
I'm just putting it out as a
I agree,
suggestion.
and I think, to Mr. Curry's point, maybe the general liability wasn't the right way to go, but I do think, at the very least, a short-term rental rider, in my opinion, would be something that I'd like to see. And I feel like that the owner should have, in their best interest as well.
Oh, yeah, they need skin in the game, I just,
Yeah, I appreciate the comment, it's worth, just looking further into.
okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, council, members, and Mr. Manager, first time I've ever spoken ever in my life to political.
Would you mind stating your name?
My name is Chris Sleeth, and I'm owner of one of the condos in Redwood Commons. I'm also on the HOA board, although I'm not here in any HOA capacity, but it's interesting to hear these things that may come back to affect what we have to do with our condo owners. I'd like to thank you for the conversation on this. Several questions that I had have been addressed. I don't want to repeat everything, but I'd like to just make sure that you would understand. Another voice says, with the parking, I think there may be some flexibility required. I know we have to address that within the HOA. In the busy season, some people turn up with one car for a condo, and probably only 10 of our 28 condos are full-time residents. The rest of them are owner use only at the peak seasons, or they are rentals. Okay, so we have times when it's busy, and we have to say that people think there's designated spaces for themselves. We have to say no. You use a space that's free, and we have some overflow areas. So it's not designated parking spaces. There's sort of a flexibility. And we do find we have enough space for all the cars when all the condos are used at Christmas, New Year's. And I agree that the real issue here is, as we seem to have concluded, that the parking on the street, clamp down on that and find people. Personally, I'd be concerned about losing my ability to rent my condo out. I use it myself a lot, but I also rent it out for about 4 or 5 weeks a year. I wouldn't like to lose that ability just because one of my tenants acted so irresponsibly. I'd like them to be penalized for acting irresponsibly, not me. But I can understand there's two sides to that argument, okay? I've got a question, if I can. The previous motion, we discussed the International Fire Code, and I don't think I completely understood, but I thought I heard the fire chief say that there'd be sort of grandfathering for uses. And I'm thinking about the 12.1.15B and the possible requirement for one occupant per 200 square feet. Is the comment from the fire chief applicable here that if my condo was built in '79, maybe rented, at least by me, if not by the previous owners, at least by me for 6 years, if not the previous owners for much longer, is there any grandfathering on that application of the International Fire Code? Am I just completely misunderstanding something?
I'll let Chief Vance address that for you.
Yeah,
Thank you, gentlemen, lady, for listening to me.
I think the short answer, I hesitate to use the word grandfathering, although I did stand up here and use that. But again, the state fire marshal, and us being an agent of the state fire marshal are not gonna inspect a home and enforce, occupancy requirements from previous codes. It's not part of the fire department's inspections for residential fire inspections. There's not such an animal. Again, the state fire marshal and the Village of Angel Fire Department will focus on businesses and inspections centered around businesses, and anything that is related to the short-term ordinance that the language comes up with is outside of our purview. Now, if that type of language is in there in the short-term rental ordinance, and that is the standard, and the way that I see a self-inspection going is you're gonna have a mechanism in place, like a QR code to scan and maybe go in and fill out a form, or perhaps go to the village website, or come and pick up an application, and that would be attached to your application. And fill out a form, either electronically or manually, for your fire inspection, and that would be very reasonable along the lines of having fire extinguishers, having 2 means of egress, just the basic stuff, and you're gonna say, yes, all of these things apply, and perhaps some sort of attestment at the end that certifies that I, Jason Van, certify that all of these things to be true, yada, yada, submit your application. And so we will have a process on the back end to be able to look at those applications, and if there are any red flags or any issues that may require inspection in person, then you would be held to the standard of that fire inspection checklist, but not enforcing International Fire Code, et cetera.
So, and to help clarify something, if you don't mind, if you could describe your condo, how many bedrooms and bathrooms is your condo? Or you could give me an example, and I can give you an occupancy, as stated as how we're prescribing it in this ordinance.
Okay. Sorry, do you want me to stand here? I know of another condo in the complex that has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, as do many of the condos in Redwood Commons. They may have 2 king beds, or a king bed, queen bed, and then they have a sofa that's a sleeping bed, so they theoretically could have 6 students.
So that's what you advertise as 6, and under this ordinance as it's written currently, you'd be allowed to have 5. And that's because of the way we've written it is based on bathrooms. We've written in there for an occupancy load of 5 persons per bathroom and 2 persons per half bath.
Right.
So the International Fire Code will not restrict your occupancy.
Okay.
The way we've drafted this, would.
May I ask if there's a particular reason why we have a number like that? I mean, I'm not gonna ask for the answer now, but I suggest that the market, I'm a bit of a free market capitalist, let the market decide. I'm personally surprised if 6 students try to stay in my place, but hey, they're students. And I'm concerned when I go to stay in it next, which is usually I'm the next person in there, I'm like, there's not any sign that anybody's been in here. It's quite clear they're acting responsibly. But they choose to, and they want to split the cost 6 ways so they can go skiing in our lovely resort. So I just asked, do we need to have a number like that?
Well, I'm afraid we do, because we've also seen where people put 10 or 12 in that same unit.
Yeah, I would not want to be one of them.
And it also boils back down to the parking issues, Manager Weir.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council. So, there's 2 reasons why. First of all, we've been advised by legal counsel, because there are liabilities once we issue a permit. In order to have a short-term rental, we now assume some liability for that short-term rental. And if we don't take precautions to provide public safety, then we could be sued by the renters who start a fire in a building that's overpopulated. The other reason is a nuisance factor. Unfortunately, again, I think Chief Hogriff will attest that we have people where they have large number of people staying in a resident that's been rented through short-term rentals, causing nuisance to the people around them. And so those are the 2 reasons primarily that we have tried to address a reasonable occupancy number.
I wanted to ask the question. And the fact I've asked the question means that you hear an opinion, which is fine.
No,
Thank you very much again for listening to me.
Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
I'll just add one other comment to that, and this partially addresses your concern too, and part of those, numbers are based on the, septic system and not overloading a septic system and what it was originally designed for. So when a individual building was built, and if it's on a septic system, it was, intended to have so many sleeping units and so many people per sleeping units, and that septic system was designed to handle that load.
That's interesting.
If there's not any other questions or comments at this
One
time.
final comment on the advertising. I have a short-term rental across the street from me, and it's been heavily used this winter. And because it's been so dark here this winter, I have people up and down the road 3 and 4 times figuring out where it is. So anything that the owner could do to help with that problem from an advertising standpoint.
And I think address signs too, is something that we need to, aside from this, but we need to take another look at too, for public safety. Ms. Curry?
My name's Maria Curry. I'm with Resort Properties of Angel Fire. Thank you, council people, for addressing these issues tonight. I had a question about under 12.1-4, item E, number 2, site plan shall include location and dimensions of all required on-site parking spaces as established in this ordinance. So if we readjust the parking, will that item be stricken?
Yes,
Or we, okay.
already have.
Okay. And then I had a quick question about, you referenced nuisances. Do we have any data or statistics on that? Because we've never really gotten any calls about loud guests or.
There are a few well-known party houses in Angel Fire. I'm not saying any of them are yours, but I think that's what we're trying to avoid is
Right.
the home with 60 kids from tech for the weekend that really should have 20 in it. It does create.
Well, we have an age limit.
Sure,
You have to be
sure.
25 to rent from us. But I'm just curious if that is an issue, because Angel Fire is a pretty sleepy town. It's more family oriented. Have there really been incidents?
Yeah.
I've been
there
here
has
7.
And I can.
I've even
Okay.
had them, in my neighborhood.
Okay.
Personally, but there are incidents, I don't wanna say it's a lot, it's
Yeah, well,
significant,
I
but when
I'd
they
like to
do
back it up
occur,
with
they can
statistics
be,
if this is a.
they can be, this was before Chief Hogriff was hired, but, we have had to have the police respond to those types of scenarios. And there wasn't a lot that the police could do other than maybe cite, at that point, a noise ordinance. But that was basically a bunch of college kids rented a house, I don't know how many, and they were, I wouldn't have wanted that to be my house, I'm sure it
My
was
guess,
trash.
Mario, is that Chief Hoger could provide you with some statistics over in a month from now.
Okay, sounds good.
Over just the Christmas break.
Yeah, I would
Because I
be
think
curious to see it.
They'll be
but-
responding.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay, ordinance 2024, -08 modifications closed for public comment. Moving on to item 4, under J, ordinance 2024-09 personnel ordinance. Ordinance 2024-09 modifications open for public comment. We got this out. Manager Ware, do you have anything that you'd like to?
All I'll say, this is, Mr. Mayor and Council, this is, an ordinance that we've been working on now for 5 months. And, it's been worked on very closely by, our direct reports routine, the management team here. There's been a lot of input, there's been a lot of changes, we've gone back and forth. We put considerable consideration into the language of this ordinance. And Just the history, I think I've informed y'all before, this was requested to be done by our insurer. After a lawsuit that we were involved in, relating to a personnel issue, our insurer said, you guys gotta update this isn't right, and blah, 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 it wasn't good. They actually paid for the first round of legal fees, our insurer did, that got us started. We then took it to our legal counsel with feedback from the management team. We basically come with a lot of negotiating to compromise on the items that are in here to be our new personnel ordinance. So this will provide some things, there are some things in it I would, that we've added that I would like to make the council aware of if you haven't seen them already. We added the ability to have a PRN employee. We've had them for years, and there was nothing in our previous ordinance that said we couldn't have a PRN, but there is nothing that said that we could, and every other form of employee was defined previously in the ordinance, so we included that in the ordinance. We did, as the council requested, increase the compensation for working on holidays from 8 hours to 12 hours, as previously directed by the council. That is in here. We have previously the language in the prior ordinance only allowed a very small percent increase in pay for being on call. So when you were on call, you were paid a 6% hourly rate for being on call. That's below industry standards, let's call it industry standards. Unfortunately, in defiance of the ordinance, the police department had been paying 100% for on-call. It was not allowed, it wasn't specified in our ordinance that we could pay that much. The only thing was specified was the 6%. And so when we looked at all of that, we went back and forth, we came to a compromise at a 25% rate that people will be paid of their hourly wage. They'll be paid when they're on call, and that's when they're on call and they're required to respond within 20 minutes, and they have a lot of restrictions. They have to be available by phone, they can't consume alcohol, and so on. So that type of on-call in here is at 25%, which is actually an increase for everybody except the police department. We've also have so we changed the snow policy. So before, when we shut down the village for non-essential personnel, the essential personnel had no benefit other than getting paid for the hours that they work. So we don't close the village lightly. It's for public safety reasons that we close the village, or staff safety, I should say. But we do require essential personnel to come in anyhow, even if it's dangerous. And the essential personnel that came in, other than the hours they worked, which could very well be their normal hours at a normal rate, they didn't really receive any significant benefit. Although the people that weren't essential, if they came in, they would get extra hours because they would get compensated even though they came in. Anyhow, it was a system that I thought actually benefited the wrong people. And with today's technology, most of our staff, at least administrative staff, can work from home. Because we only have one person left in the village that doesn't have a laptop computer, and we are working on replacing that right now. So by the time this goes into play, all of our staff that utilize computers will have laptops, and they, with the technology we have and the workflow we're implementing, they'll all be able to work from home. So we changed this wasn't in the prior ordinance, it was a policy established by the prior manager, but we've included it into the ordinance now. And basically what it says is when the village shut down, people that are non-essential will work from home. We fully realize that some people can't do their jobs from home, but they will be available in case they're called. One of the aspects of the snow, or the village closure policy is that managers, on an as-needed basis, can determine that a staff person that normally is non-essential can be essential based on the emergency. And so they have to be available to come in, and their manager can contact them, ask them to do things, maybe do study classes and things like that, and continue to work, but we will continue to pay them their hourly rate. The people that do come in, they will get basically a extra pay. 7.5% is what we settled on as pay. So if the village shuts down because of inclement weather, which is the primary reason, but we shut down because there was no water, because there's no electricity, things like that. So if the village is shut down during normal business hours and people are required to come in, regardless, they will get paid 7.5% extra for coming in when other employees aren't coming in. The other item that did change is we also have a bonus pay for people that work at night. So basically from 7 p.m. until 5 a.m. Right, previously that only applied to the police department, and it was 6%, I believe, is what, or is a fixed rate $1.60 an hour.
Yes.
Which equated to approximately 6% for most of our police officers. So we opened that up to all of our staff. So now any staff that has to work in non-business hours will get a 7.5% pay on top of their normally hourly rate. I mean,
Except you, Greg.
So, a lot of the changes we made were just to try and make things fair across all departments, and to try and incentivize our staff for doing things that are above and beyond the call of duty. And the other changes that were made primarily were to protect the village from liability that's related to employment law.
Any questions or comments for Manager Weir? Okay. Ordinance 2024-09, modifications is closed for public comment. The public hearing is now closed. So we're moving on to item K. I'd like to open discussion to approve ordinance 2024-06, which was the Title III modifications to lodger's tax applied to short-term nightly rentals. Is there any further discussion on that ordinance? If not, I would ask Mayor Pro Tem to make a motion.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-06.
Second.
Roll call vote on item K. Mayor Pro Tem Howe,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Moving on to item L, I'd like to open discussion to approve ordinance 2024-07. That is the Title IV adopting 2021 Fire Code addition to the International Fire Code. If there's no further questions or discussion, I would ask Mayor Pro Tem Howe for a motion.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-07.
Second.
Roll call vote on item L. Mayor Pro Tem Howe,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Moving on to item M, I will open discussion for, to approve ordinance 2024-08. Ordinance 2024-08 is Title 12 modification to include lodging in the provision of short-term rentals. With discussion open, I would like to hear from the council as to how they would like to proceed on this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this to a subsequent meeting.
Is there a second? I'm sorry,
Point of order.
manager.
So technically, a postponement is when you keep it within the same.
No, that's tabling. Postponing it moves it to the next.
Okay, all right, thank you for that.
I got them backwards.
So Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we postpone ordinance 2024-08 to a subsequent council meeting.
I'll second.
Roll call vote on, to postpone item M. Mayor Pro Tem Howell,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Okay, we'll move on to item N. I'd like to open discussion to approve ordinance 2024-09. This is the ordinance, for the personnel ordinance. With no further discussion or questions, I would ask Mayor Pro Tem Howell for a motion.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2024-09.
I'll second.
Roll call vote on item N. Mayor Pro Tem Howell,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks.
Aye.
Pass.
Moving on to item O, I would like to ask for a motion to move into executive session per NMSA 10-15-1H-2. Number one, discuss the status on the Ann Ferguson case. Number two, update on benchmark condominium case. Three, discussion of potential purchase of real property.
I make a motion to move into executive session for NMSA 10-15-1H-2 to discuss number one, status on Ann Ferguson case. Number two, update on the benchmark condominium case. Number three, discussion of potential purchase of real property.
I'll second.
Going off the record.
Recording stopped.
We didn't vote to go.
Do we, hey, we need to vote to go in? We probably should. Yeah, we need to roll call.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Okay, so roll call vote, Mayor Pro Tem Howell,
Aye.
Counselor Humbert,
Aye.
Counselor Crane,
Aye.
and Counselor Weeks. Pass.
Hey, good to meet you.
Hi. Nice to see you. Yeah, you guys met me in person. How are you guys? Good, you too. Yeah. Seeing us. I know, it's getting pretty wide in executive session to go through. Yeah, it was nice to meet you. Sorry. Yeah. Good. Absolutely.
Pleasure.